So today for my lesson, we are going to be focusing on second grade social studies. The theme is Native Americans, so we are going to do the Three Sisters, which is corn, squash, and beans that the Native Americans used to plant for their crops. The goals for this lesson are to explore what type of foods Native Americans planted, and then also to explore the Three Sisters. And so we're going to do that. But also, just to give you a little insight, the students would have to read a short story, The Three Sisters. And they would also have a worksheet to do on the Three Sisters as well. They would have to list facts and characteristics about the Three Sisters and describe them. So those are the goals for this lesson. So to get into the prior knowledge of this lesson, we are going to do a gaining attention activity. I would ask the students what type of foods they like to eat. So I would ask them to write down their responses and see what they come up with. And then you would just kind of stimulate the discussion and, ask them what they think, and then just kind of get to know your students and what they already know about Native Americans and what they used to eat. And then you also just want to record their responses and on like a dry erase board, which I don't have at the moment. But so yes, that's also what we would do. And just to kind of start it off, I would ask the students, I would present the students with a basket of corn, beans, and squash, and then I would have them pass the items around so they could hold them, feel them, see them, and then I would ask the students, or tell the students, that we would be learning about Native Americans and what they used to grow in their crops and what type of food they used to eat. I would tell the students also that there are all kinds of different tribes and that we were going to focus mostly on the Appalachian tribe, which was around this area, and who also planted corn, beans, and squash, the Three Sisters. I would also introduce the concept of farming and explain to the students that Native Americans, that they started planting different seeds and kind of just seeing what they could grow, and that's how they kind of discovered the Three Sisters. I would also ask the students how they think corn, squash, and dried beans are planted. And then I would present the students with like a clear rectangular like container, and then we would I would put the container down in the room, and then I would so that everyone could see it, and then I would get like a bag of soil and I would pour the soil in there, and then I would get actual seeds and plant the seeds in there, and then water them, and then tell them that's how the Native Americans planted the Three Sisters. But before I plant the seeds, I would pass them around, let the students hold the seeds, see what they look like, and then I would ask the students, what they think will grow if we plant those seeds in there. So that is how I would start it off, and then I would take the Three Sisters short story that I showed you, and I would read that to the students, just so they could get a clear image of the Three Sisters. And I would also read another little excerpt of Florida's American Indians Through History, just to introduce the term of the Three Sisters, and then kind of just explain to the students that concept. Getting more into the activities for the students, and to kind of guide them in those activities. I would tell the students that there are, a lot of different myths about the three sisters, and then I would actually do the short story, not in the teacher presentation. Sorry. And then I'd kind of just explain to the students that the three sisters, came from many tribes all over. And so then I would take a piece of paper and give it, and I'd put the students into groups. And then I would have the students write their own version of the three sisters. So there'd be like 3 people to a group. And each student would be either the corn, beans, or squash. And then they would write their own story and their own concept of those characters. And so they would get to decide what happens in the story of the corn, beans, squash, whichever one they choose. So basically it's like their own version. And then I would have the students write that separately. So they're symbolizing those characters. And then I would combine their ideas, and then they would write their own short story about the three sisters. And then I would have them share with the class. For students working independently, I would have each student get a copy of the three sisters that we already read, and then I would pass out the worksheet that I told you, the worksheet. And the students would just kind of complete that independently by themselves, so that we understand, that way we know they are understanding the concept of what we're learning in the lesson, and then they can show that through doing the worksheet on their own. The students would just kind of list facts and characteristics that describe each of the three sisters, and then they would list, they would also write down which crop that represents each of the three sisters in their worksheet. And then I would do an assessment at the end of the lesson to show, what my students have learned, to see if they've gotten anything out of it. And I would just kind of have the students, write their own illustration or draw their own illustrations of the three sisters. And I would have them label each of the crops. So after they draw it, they'll label it. And then I would have them define the roles of the corn, beans, and the squash underneath those illustrations. And then, I would also have them write another, small paragraph stating, which crop they thought was the most valuable out of the three sisters. So that shows some critical thinking. For their objective, it was mostly in the depth of knowledge, recall, and reproduction. But I think it does have a little bit of critical thinking, asking them in the assessment to state which crop they thought, or which corn, beans, or squash they thought was most valuable, and why. So I think that is a little bit of critical thinking. So after that, I think that would be my assessment for that lesson. And then just to kind of get more into the back end of things, I would do just to kind of make sure that the students have learned that we've done each standard, and the standard obviously is to compare the cultures of Native American tribes in various geographic regions of the United States, and then also the writing standard, which would, with guidance and support from adults, use a variety of digital tools to produce and publish writing, including collaboration with peers. To get more in detail with that, the students publicly telling their story kind of goes with that standard. But just to make sure that those goals are met. And then obviously just the materials, like just having the rectangle container and doing the actual planting of the seeds and showing the students that concept, I think is really valuable. within the lesson, and will definitely help with their proficiency. And that is pretty much it for the three sisters, and that is my lesson plan.